Hi, friends. Welcome to tuning into another episode of Complex Like Wine, the podcast where we talk about complicated things and improve over time, just like wine does. This episode's really special. We have a very important guest who's done and continues to do so much incredible work for the communities. And if you live in the Southern California region, you know especially communities in Los Angeles are in need of dire help when regarding to the homeless crisis. And there's a lot of things that we can continue to do to support, and we're going to learn a lot about that from our guest this week, Mel. He is the co-founder of the Shower of Hope, which is the largest mobile showers in the state, as if I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mel, but
yes.
Cool. Yeah, so the largest mobile showers, and if you're not familiar with that, it is, as it sounds like, mobile showers that are dedicated to helping homeless people be able to have a shower and whatever needs. And you guys also supply foods and toiletries and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me on, Sarah. Excited to be a part of your podcast. So when you ask on what we supply, one of the things is when we look at the individuals who are on our streets experiencing homelessness, everything they can carry is limited to a backpack or a shopping cart or at most a big carry-on bag. So for the most part, individuals don't have either towels or don't have clean towels. Majority don't have soap or shampoo that they carry with them. And a lot of the things we take for granted, like toothpaste, toothbrushes, deodorant, they don't have it on them. So when a person comes to the Shower of Hope, our first priority is we make sure we welcome in a way that they feel human. All our team members wear name tags so they understand that it's a very lateral respect that exists. And then, we welcome them to our hygiene table where you get towel, soap, shampoo. There's a lot of other items that we don't think of. A lot of individuals really want Q-tips after a shower, right? Sometimes after a shower, a lot of us have water in our ears and it can get pretty itchy. So everything that you and me would use for a shower, we try to provide for everybody who comes to the Shower of Hope.
Mm-hmm. I've seen the videos and I'm familiar with Damian, one of the co-founders, your partner, and just the amazing work that you guys do for these people that need a shower. And like you said, so many things that we take for granted on the daily, just being able to see the work you guys do, I think is incredible. And also want to say thank you so much for taking the time. I know in your car, you have a very busy schedule. So I want to say thank you so much for sitting down with me and just talking about this issue and informing me and the guests or the audience that listens to this podcast what we need to know more and what we can do to help. So for the audience listening, Mel was actually a guest on the Kelly Clarkson's show talking about the Shower of Hope, so that was really cool. I'll put the link down to the video for anyone curious to watch that later. But yeah, I would love to hear more about how you got into this mission and this project and the importance of the homeless crisis and what you could do to help with mobile showers. I would love to hear more about that story.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Sri Lanka. And, a lot of people refer to Sri Lanka as a poor country. And I grew up in that environment where there was a lack of resources, but nothing that we could compare homelessness to what we have in Los Angeles. Growing up in Sri Lanka, then moving here in 2003, I was primarily on the west side and in areas that were more suburban where especially before 3-4 years ago, homelessness was more relegated to pockets, Skid Row, and a couple of pockets here and there. So my first 7 years, I kind of had blinders on, I guess. Didn't really look into it, didn't really want to research about what was going on. And then in 2011, one day I was coming back home and I made a completely wrong turn and I drove through Skid Row. And that was my intro into homelessness in LA. But the reality was, because I had been so ignorant, And that's the truth. I had been so ignorant to what was happening. When I saw Skid Row, it must have been like 1:30 a.m. I parked my car, I got out of my car, and I actually asked the person who was on the street if the people there were homeless. That's how ignorant I was to the situation. And then when, obviously the person was like, they were surprised by my question as well. And, it was, to me, it was shocking because, like, again, I'm from Sri Lanka, we're a poor country, and here I am in one of the wealthiest cities in the world, the celebrity capital, the movie capital, you name it. And, there's a place called Skid Row where people with mental illness are left to fend for themselves, are victimized by, from the police to drug dealers to you name it. And it just was a lot for me to comprehend. So 2011, we just, didn't know where to start. I didn't have an education in, let alone homelessness. I didn't have a education in psychology or psychiatry. So kind of started by, hey, what's a basic need here? Asked the people, they said they were hungry. So in 2011, we started what it was called Monday Night Mission, which is where we would go on Monday nights to Skid Row. We'd get to Skid Row around 9 o'clock at night, and we'd hand out food. Back in the day, not even back in the day, even to now, not a lot of groups go to Skid Row at night because of its volatile nature. So we got this like very unique and, to be honest, very raw, rough intro into homelessness, because Skid Row was this pocket of people who had been like forcibly moved in. We used to call it a concentration camp without walls, or it still is, and
Mm-hmm.
or people refer to it to a mental hospital without walls. And you go there, and there's so much people living so close to each other on the street with so many different, from mental illness to addiction to so many other issues, that it it it's it really makes you understand how bad of a problem it is, and how much we need to get involved. And that's why I said I was ignorant to it before, because even though now it's very pronounced and we see it everywhere, these are all results of a failed system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I grew up in the Los Angeles County, so I remember my first time going to Skid Row. I was probably end of elementary, going into middle school to do food service and give food to the homeless. And the amount of change that's happened from then to now, you don't even have to be near Skid Row anymore. There's just a huge crisis. There's no more room, and people have a really bad stigma of kind of stereotyping all certain type of people are homeless for this reason. And you after you learn and you do some research, you realize there's so many different variables. And now, even with this pandemic that just happened, sometimes it's just really out of people's control. And so kind of want to now ask, what have been, now that you've noticed this and you've gotten more involved and now you're heavily in contact with different homeless people and hearing the stories, what has been maybe the misassumptions that people might have of homeless people, and what could we do to help our ignorance about that?
That's a good question, Sarah, because like you said, like we have a lot of misconceptions. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said a lot of things that are out of our control. Um, you know, been working in this field for 10 years, something you learn is like, you can meet a person on the street, and it could be something where they say, hey, I've been homeless for 6 months, or they could say, I've been homeless for 10 years. But the chances are, if you look at that person's history, there's been a lot of things that has led up to that point. There is a lot of people who have become homeless because of, you know, especially when it comes to women. One of the driving factors for women to be homeless is domestic violence. And
Mm.
domestic violence is a driver that is, compared to a lot of other issues, very sudden, because a person could be in a very abusive relationship, have lost control of their financial assets. And when the abuser is like, usually male, it's like, you know what, get out. the truth is that person ends on the street with very little resources, and the only way they can get their resources back is they have to go back to court and fight to get control of whatever's in their spouse's name. Um, but when it but when it comes to a majority of the homeless, when you look at the individual suffering from mental illness or addiction or both, there usually is a long history of trauma that leads back to literally the very early stages of life, or even we meet individuals who you know uh, when they were born with an addiction because their biological mother was addicted to heroin. So I like that question, because one of the things I learned is there's so many things that are out of control, out of our control. Yeah, we can face a small financial hardship and get back on our own feet. But if you're coming from a low income neighborhood, grow up in a low income, born into a low income family, only have access to go to schools that are poor, that don't have the resources to give you what you need, um, the truth is the future, it can be very tough. It can be tough because if you have a small, like for me, if I have a small financial hardship, I can still call my parents and say, hey, I'm stuck. I'm in a mess. I need some cash. I can call my friends. But if you're born into a poor family, chances are your parents are in a worse financial situation, so they can't help. And because you grew up in a low income neighborhood, your friends can't help you either. So for what a little, even for a kid like me from Sri Lanka, right? A small financial hardship for me, which I could easily solve by calling my parents. For a person who grew up in, we have communities of color in all over Southern California, where like from LA to Bakersfield, where you could grow up in one of those neighborhoods and you could call your parents. And the question is, do some of these people have parents, first of all, because 20% of people coming out of foster care end up homeless. 20%. People
Wow.
don't understand that number, right? Like 20%, that's 1 out of 5 people. And this is the wealthiest country in the world. 1 out of 5 people coming out of foster care are homeless, so they don't have a parent to call. They don't have that phone call. So, um, you know, there's a lot of things around homelessness that are out of control just because of how it relates to where, of a person coming from a low income, yeah, neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 20%. That's very large. Wow. I didn't know it was that high.
What's sad is that is just the amount of kids who become homeless straight out of foster care within the first year. If you
Hmm.
look at the amount of foster care kids who become homeless throughout their life at some stage, can you guess what that percentage is?
Oh, goodness. I'm gonna estimate maybe at least 50%.
Would you believe me if I said it was 72%?
Oh, wow.
At some stage of their life, they become homeless. And it's one of those things where we've known for a long time that, first it was the orphanage system, then they thought it wasn't working, so they moved to the foster care system. And everybody knows that our foster care system is a failure. It sets up kids for failure. But it's like that thing, like, hey, let's talk about homelessness, but let's not talk about the reasons people become homeless. And like, if you're not talking about one of the biggest reasons people become homeless, which is foster care, then no matter what you do to fix all the other issues, you're never going to really address the problem.
No, that's very true. And thank you for informing me and the audience about that. I hope some people in the audience that puts a bit of perspective. So now we kind of learned some of the reasons why it sets some people up for failure and circumstances out of control. What have you seen from your 10 years now of working with this community? What have you seen of things that have worked, and what are things that have not worked when it comes to helping people get back on their feet or just trying to help the homeless crisis in a general?
The thing is, there's a lot of programs and agencies that help. But what I liken it to is, Have you seen the Seattle bubblegum wall?
Oh, no, I haven't.
So there's this thing called the Seattle bubblegum wall where everybody goes and puts a piece of chewing gum on this wall, and this
Right.
wall is like literally hundreds of thousands of pieces of bubblegum.
Mm-hmm.
That's what homeless service programs are. It's these little fixes that everybody's putting in, but the thing is there's no cohesion.
Mm-hmm.
And what it's like the bubblegum wall, because you could have one program, you have another program working on top of it doing the same thing. So we have solutions that work. We have programs that help kids coming out of foster care that are working amazingly well. Even though we are called the Shower of Hope, excuse me, we have what's called Hope Housing for Students, which is a college program, housing program for unhoused community college students. We have foster kids coming in. They do great in our programs. So just to name a few, right? Like, when it comes to emergencies, when a person is like homeless, doesn't have a place to go tonight, Union Rescue Mission in downtown LA is a great example. Then we have a program called Housing Works, which is based in Hollywood, where they get people who are homeless, they house people, but not only do they house people, Sarah, one of the amazing things they do is they give people purpose. Like they'll train people in a certain skill set so that when they get housed, like they actually had this really awesome case where this lady, she got housed. She was homeless for over 15 years. She got housed, and then she told her housing was case manager that, hey, I want to learn coding. So they put her into a coding class, and next thing you know, 3 months later, this woman is fully employed as a uh, medical coder. So it's, you get a lot of amazing programs. We have a lot of substance abuse rehabilitation programs. Uh, Mental health programs are one of the things that work, but we have very few for what the demand is. Um, and then you get a lot of amazing small grassroots organizations and individuals who do everything from advocacy to outreach on the streets.
Wow, that is incredible. I can't imagine how many lives all these different programs in Shop Hope are helping. And like again, the daily things we take for granted, just being able to go to school to do a class, even like myself, just a recent student, there'd be times I take for granted going to class because like I'll have to do more work. But those are privileges. And so wow, that's incredible. Now
You know,
oh
just to give an idea of how we take showers for granted, right?
mm-hmm.
Like every day I wake up, like I can walk 10 feet to my shower, right? So some days it's cold and that 10 feet, I'm still like complaining about it. But when you're on the street, most days you don't have access to a shower, let
Mm-hmm.
alone let alone have to walk in the cold. You can't. Second, like I said earlier, even if you have access to a shower, because you don't have storage, you don't have a clean towel, let alone having clean underwear, right? And then once you're able to get a shower, a lot of our, unhoused folks don't have clean clothes to change into. Um, and the reason I bring this up, and something that's very critical about showers, is it's a simple thing. But what happens to us, the question is, what happens to us when we can't take a shower, right? We're like, we're human beings. We're very self-conscious of how we look, but also how we smell. And I think one of the most important things that we don't understand is how it affects us, about how we start to smell ourselves. And for me, the example is what happens to me when I come out of the gym. When I come out of the gym, like, anyone who does cardio, you get BO. And when you have BO, like I'm going home from the gym, I hide in a corner of the elevator. Even if I know people, sometimes I'll try to avoid them because you don't want a person to like see you and be like, oh yeah, Mel's got BO. Now, now you put that situation into a person who hasn't had a shower for not one day, but let's talk about like a week to even a month. Now what happens is it's not me isolating myself in an elevator, it's me isolating from my friends because I don't want my friends to know that I haven't showered in a month. It's me not connecting to the people who can help because I don't want them to even if I don't know, right? If there's a case manager who can help me, I'm not gonna approach a case manager if I know I'm gonna smell. So guess what? I'm gonna isolate myself. And the more I isolate myself, the less resources I have. And those are little things that push a person without access to a shower into being homeless for a long time. So, you know, it's, we take our showers for granted, but like, for a person on the street, it's one of those things we don't think about that, like, it's really tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Even for people trying to get a job, trying to apply anywhere, if you're conscious about your smell or your appearance and people are not gracious or understanding, you won't be able to have those same opportunities to be able just to even get inside the door of a building just to hand out or talk to somebody. With
Exactly.
with the shower of hope, can you share more about the whole process of how many mobile showers there are, and how many times you guys go to your communities in a month, or how many people you guys see? I mean, I would love to learn more all about that.
Yeah. So it's called the Shower of Hope Singular because when myself and Damian started it, we were like, hey, let's get a mobile shower and let's use it on the weekends, right? So we started 4 years ago with one shower, and I have to give him a shout out. One of the people who believed in us from the start was your dad, Caesar. We got this 4-star mobile shower trailer, and we started using on the weekends, but next thing you know, we started noticing how much people appreciated of it. But it wasn't something that our guests who used the shower saw. It was everyone from people who ended up supporting us to city and county officials. So we went from having one mobile shower 4 years ago to having 9 mobile showers right now. But I want to stress on the fact that we had one mobile shower before because I want to let the organizations out there know that it's difficult, but if you start small, you can start and you can have a significant impact. Because we were the group who was feeding people on the street, and now, hey, guess what? Like right now, we have 9 mobile shower trailers. We have 24 locations across LA County. We have locations in Riverside and Bakersfield. We have 2 programs which are called safe parking programs. There are parking lots where people can come in and park at night. We provide food, security, and bathroom access. For the individuals who are working, who live in their vehicles, we have a program where if we know an individual who's working, who's getting a steady income, we'll pay for their first month and their deposit, and we'll place them into an apartment. So that's a safe parking program. Um, I told you about our student housing program, and the other program we have, which kind of touches on what you talked about for a person not being able to go to a job interview. We actually have 12 of our team members who we hired directly who were unhoused, and we're really excited about that program because these are individuals who were going through severe trauma, but they wanted to work. They wanted to get back into the workforce. So we wanted to create employment that was that where we recognized of where they were coming from. So we would have individuals coming in late because they were taking public transportation. So we worked around it. We would have individuals who, we've had individuals who needed support in other ways where it's like, they're coming in, they have so much trauma, and they're starting work, and it's like, hey, coming back into work after 3-4 years isn't easy. So we help people through that. So we have workforce development program, and we just hired our 12th staff member last week. And yeah, and then the housing program for students, I think that's really cool. It really affects people your age. Our age category for the students is 18 to 28 years old. Candidates have to be going to a community college, and they have to have a 2.0 GPA. If they don't, we'll still accept them in, but we put them on what's called student progress plan. So where we build out their courses for them, we get tutors involved, so they have support going through while they're attending classes, and we provide case management. And what we mean by case management is we make sure, like, that our students are going to school. If they're not going to school or they're missing school, okay, why are you missing school? What do you need? Do you need bus tokens? Do you need computer access? Our case managers make sure, like, they have a balanced workload and that they're supported throughout the journey.
That's amazing. With the student housing, where are you guys having those houses located?
So we first started by just renting a home. So we first had a home in Rosemead. Now we have a home in Boyle Heights, and then we also partnered up with an institution called Maryvale. It's a mental health counseling center that has outreach workers for the community. They have this huge campus with buildings they weren't using, so that became a campus for young women going to college.
Okay. Wow. Well, since you brought up a little bit about mental health, and this is a mental health related podcast, let's talk about mental health of people that are homeless or on the streets or in the process of trying to get on their feet. What have you learned or experienced from interacting with people where their mental health is at?
That's you know that's a very
Mm-hmm.
that's a very difficult question. So, you know, like I talked about earlier, for the most part, by the time a person becomes homeless, there has been events leading up to it. Even if it's, let's say, an eviction, a person isn't evicted overnight. They get told 3 months beforehand that they're going to be evicted, and usually before that, there's a job loss, or there could be a relationship breakup. So either way, by the time a person's on the street, they're already coming with some kind of mental distress, right? Like, it could be depression because they broke up. It could be depression because they broke up. They couldn't afford the apartment on their own. Now they got an eviction. Now they're on the street. And then you also get people who already have a pre-existing mental illness, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we've heard of so many stories of people who are on the streets because they're suffering from, severe schizophrenia, or, like, a lot of people have seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, and one thing about that movie is, um, I forget his name, but in real life, his wife was exceptional because she made sure that he didn't fall to the street. She recognized he had a mental illness, and she did everything to support him. And here's a guy who's a Nobel Prize winner in physics, who's who could easily be the person we see on the street because they see things that are not really there. So when it comes to when we are seeing individuals on the street, there's a lot of individuals who have a pre-existing mental health issue, or they're going through severe mental stress, right? All the issues that happen, and then now on top, you're afraid people are going to hurt you, kill you, rape you, steal everything you have. um, you're automatically in a severe mentally distressed state. So I would say that any person you see who's living in a tent, living in a vehicle, they're not at a stable level. And it's important because, you know, we can't solve homelessness until we stabilize a person. And we can't stabilize a person until we take all those factors away that contribute to their state, right? If it's a pre-existing condition, we have to treat that. If it's something because of the stresses or PTSD from being on the street, we have to take care of that. If it's both and an addiction, we have to take care of all of that. But all that matters towards how do we get that person who we see on the way on the street back inside, back under a roof.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, that's true. You have to make sure you have to do the the steps before. That's equally as important to what is happening currently. So for people that, don't have all the toolkit they need to not be homeless, or people that are kind of taken or in a different situation where it kind of puts them down that route, or mentally there's somewhere where it could leave them going down a route where they're mentally unstable. What are things that you could tell listeners of preventative ways or ways they could seek help? That way they can prevent that being their outcome.
That's a great question, because we are living in 2021. We're one of the few geographical areas that are lucky to say, hey, we're finally looks like we got out of that whole COVID tunnel. And the reason I say that is, like, the past year has put a huge stress on people, a mental stress, right? And the thing is, like, it's 2021, we all have stress, right? Yeah, if you're a college graduate, you have stress of, okay, where am I going to go to work? Or even like, hey, what do I want to do for work, right? Then the next question is, okay, if this is what I want to do for work, do I have to go into higher education, or do I have to move to find a job? So, we already have stress, and COVID put a pandemic stress on people. And like everyone else, like, to me, the way I see mental illness is something that we all could have if we don't take care of ourselves. So one of the most important things I think for people is, you know, humanizing going to therapy. You don't have to be a person suffering from a mental illness to go see a therapist. Any person, you, me, any person who's doing amazingly well, whether you have $1 million, whether you have amazing family, whether you have the best job, it's okay to see a therapist. Not that it's okay to see a therapist, we still need to see a therapist. We need to take care of ourselves. It's like, not seeing a therapist is like driving a car without doing an oil change. Sooner or later, the head gasket's gonna go. So I think we really need to normalize what it means to get help when we need help, and that it's okay to see a therapist. Believe it or not, when we look at our minority communities, people still look down at working with a therapist. People still, like, in our communities, the truth is, some people think it's like voodoo if you're gonna get help with medication for your mental health stresses. But the reality is, you know we need to take care of ourselves. And just like, 2021, everybody is super healthy, this, that, hey, like, people are talking about being vegan, working out, whatever. What are we doing about taking care of our mental health? And what are we, and not what we're doing, hey, once a month or even once a week of seeing a therapist. If you're gonna take care of your body every day, why aren't you taking care of your mental health every single day? It could be meditation, it could be something you're doing to manage stress, it could be something where you carve out a little piece of your day to do something. I know friends who every day after work, I know counselors who literally, drive into the hills so they can have like half an hour of complete quiet. So if you're asking me what can we do to stop people mental illness leading into that, hey, let's take care of each other every day, and let's normalize seeking therapy.
I 100% agree with you. The stigma, I think, of mental health and going to a therapist is now slowly being lessened. And it, like you said, it's really important to remember that taking care of your body also includes taking care of your mind, and you can't just do one or the other. Yeah, that was well said.
And I think another thing we really have to bring into that discussion about normalizing therapy, Zaira, is that if you know, right now there's a huge movement around healthcare for all, which I completely believe in. And a lot of that discussion is around things like diabetes, where, like, you know, hey, if you have this, people deserve free healthcare. We need to make sure people have access to free mental health care. And I think that's critical too, because it doesn't matter if we normalize seeking therapy, if people in minorities who are poor don't have access to that care. So it's a matter of normalizing therapy, and it's also a matter of making sure that it's available to everyone.
Mm, yeah, you're right. That's you first need that before it can really matter if it's normalized or not. That's very true. Wow. So, what would you say is a call of action for people listening in, or people my generation, that what is something we can do to help the homeless crisis, or what is our part when it comes to interacting with people that are struggling with this crisis?
So I always like to say that there's two things we can do. Um, the immediate, which is the individuals we see going to work, going to school, or when we're coming home. And that immediate need, and it's not even necessarily something where we talk about giving food or showers. The first thing is humanizing. It's like, you know, these are individuals just like us. How about we start a conversation, get to know the people, right? I'm not saying that it's possible in every situation, but there are situations we can do that, and that can help in the long term, where if it's a person on the street and they you know, it's not going to happen overnight, it's not going to happen in a month or a year, but one day they might come up to you and say, hey, Zaira, like, I need help. I want to get into a mental health institution or addiction recovery or shelter. And then in the long run, I think one of the best things people can do is, there's already amazing organizations in your community, and the important thing is looking into what are the organizations in your community, and then seeing how you can help them. Because there are people like, you know, I mean, there's so many organizations doing great work, but with the with the increasing crisis, their needs are increasing as well. You know, it could be a shelter that's just like, hey, like so for us, right? We could have people doing towel drives, we could have people doing sock drives, we could have people coming in to volunteer for the shower of hope. But then it could be another organization that's like, hey, like, we need volunteers to come in and spend time with our guests. You know, like, there are senior centers where they literally want volunteers to come in and play bingo with their unhoused guests. You know, so look at what's in your community, who's doing the work, and then get involved. And what you're doing is you're already getting something in motion, and you're just pushing it faster into motion and efficiency.
Mm, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, people listening in, if you want to get involved or make a difference, go to Google, look up what organizations are in your community, or even check out Shower of Hope and see what other partners they work with and see what you can do. Thank you. That's really great. Is there anything else? Oh,
and and you put in a good part about, you know, when we talk about, it's our community, right? Like, let's take care of our community. Like, what are the, like, literally, like, when we talked about organizations that do not organize I'm sorry, when we talked about issues that relate to homelessness now, some of the things are as simple as kids in your community who need tutoring. There's organizations called School on Wheels that goes to, you know, where you can go tutor a kid for an hour. You don't need the degree, nothing. All you need to do is spend an hour to tutor a person. So let's start with our community. If you have a shower of hope coming to your community, we want you to volunteer. But either way, if you have organizations in your community that do good work, uplift them. And that's, that we the best. Forget about the thousands. Forget about the thousands that are homeless. Work towards making your community better for everyone.
Amen to that. Thank you so much, Mel. Yeah, guys, look, see what you can do for your community, because I think something we forget is we try to detach ourselves from the homeless community and say that's not us, but it's still your community, and you have to do the work within to help change outward. And I think that goes with anything else. Is there anything else you wanted to educate us on or touch on about the work you're doing, or anything regarding the homeless, or just anything?
Um, you know, just because you said this was, your podcast is centered around mental health, one of the most dire needs that we have that nobody talks about is how few mental health beds that LA County has. For some reason, that conversation isn't being. People talk about housing, people talk about like services, but people don't talk about where we can go when we have a severe mental health issue. I had a friend. I had a friend myself last year. Let's just say his name was Gavin. Um, he had a mental health episode, and when he was assessed by paramedics, unfortunately in LA, people have to try to filter people out because we don't have mental health beds available. So the paramedics who assessed Gavin said that his his condition wasn't severe enough that they take him to uh, a mental health give him a mental health bed. Unfortunately, 6 hours later, Gavin took his life. We're hearing about it a lot now about how much suicides are going up. But what we're not hearing is, hey, when a person is having a mental health episode, they don't have a bed. So if you don't know, start researching about it, start talking about it. And the more we talk about it, let's talk about how do we add more so that whenever a person like Gavin has a mental health episode, we can make sure that they have a bed they can mental health bed they can go to where they're taken care of.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I didn't realize, or I haven't even, to be honest, really thought much about that issue. And wow, I'm sorry to hear about Gavin. And I hope, now that you brought this up, I hope anyone that's listening kind of gets the wheels turning of doing some research and seeing what else we can do to help with that issue. Well, yeah, thank you, Mel, so much for being on the podcast and sharing some time to educate us. I learned a lot, and I hope all the listeners out there were able to take away something. And I hope at least one of you guys goes ahead, research, and checks out a organization or community service area near you to help with this issue. Any last things you wanted to mention, Mel?
No, thank you for having me on. And yeah, thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much. Yeah. Again, I'll have the link to when he was on Kelly Clarkson. I'll put the link in the bio. I'll have all the information of the Shower of Hope in the bio, whatever platform you're listening on. And yes, thank you, Mel. Congrats on everything you've done, and can't wait to see what else you continue to do for the communities.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to this episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, so as you can tell, the structure of this episode's a little different. Mel's so gracious to spare some time with us, but since he is a very busy man, I decided to just do the wine tasting after. And so, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. But for this week's wine, we have a red from the Marche region of Italy, and the bottle is called Mare dei Viti, which means Sea of the Vine. So, for its bio, it says, "We are located in the beautiful hills of Italy, Marche region. At sunset, our rolling hillside vineyards remind us of the gentle waves in the nearby Adriatic Sea. And so we end each day looking over our Mare dei Viti, Sea of Vines. Mare dei Viti reflects for good fortune to work our lands as our ancestors have done so for many generations. Our land gives us a feeling of peace, of life, and of a desire to immerse ourselves in our lovely sea of vines. And they said that this wine pairs well with all local pasta dishes and all kinds of meat and dishes with cheeses. So if you have like a charcuterie board and some good pasta, I think this would be really good, which I might do that right after I have some brie and jam and crackers waiting for me downstairs. So I think I might do that with this wine. But of course, I'll taste and let you guys know what I think. So it's a red blend. I really like this one. I definitely think this would go really well with some cheeses and crackers. I would probably want to have this with like a good steak or just some really good pasta, but I like this. I would recommend this one if you're into a red or just want to try something from Italy. But yeah, alright, thanks guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.